Welcome to EoZTV. I'm Elder of Zion, and today my guest is Ilan Sinlenikov. Sorry, I hope I pronounced it right. The president of Students Supporting Israel International and the founder, as I understand it, correct?
Correct, this is right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining. The thing I really like about SSI, and the reason I wanted to have you on, is it's like a true grassroots organization. I mean, we know about Hillel and all these other things that you'll see on campus here and there, but you guys are like a breath of fresh air. You do interesting stuff. You come out and you cut through the red tape. It seems. How did it start?
For sure. So basically, SSI has a very interesting story to it, and the way it started, I want you to walk with me quickly at the streets of the University of Minnesota, almost exactly 8 years ago today, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a freshman student, and all over the campus, all over the university, we see lots of signs that say "Join us during the Israel Apartheid Week." And we weren't really sure what it's about. I just moved to the States from Israel not too long ago, and then we tried to figure out what's the Israel Apartheid Week, what those events are. Suddenly we see the Apartheid Wall coming up on campus as well, and we decided to check out those events. And after myself and a few other students attended the events, we realized that look at the anti-Israel side. They're doing something very powerful. They're run by students, at least on our campus, it's the students who run it. The students who are involved are not just Palestinian, they're students from all different backgrounds that attack Israel on our campus every day almost, and they're very visible. And when we try to ask yourselves, is there anything like that on the pro-Israel side, on our campus at least, on our university, we couldn't find anything like it. So the realization draws to the conclusion that we need to start a student group. We need to register a student club under the name Students Supporting Israel. It's very simple. We're students and we support Israel. And the idea, it's to be visible on the ground, to be proactive, to initiate, not just wait until something bad happens and a party of the week takes place and then we react to it, and to not just be a Jewish organization. And as we started growing on our campus, the beginning, of course, it took us a while. It wasn't like right away we turned into a national student movement. But we started growing slowly. In our first event, we had 7 people, then back to 5, 10 people, back to 5. And up until 2 years since our establishment in 2014, and more students joined us under the same name and under the same logo at Indiana University and then at DePaul University in Chicago. And that was the moment we said, hey, let's turn it into a national student movement. There is Students for Justice in Palestine on one side. Let's have a pro-Israel student movement on the opposite side of the spectrum.
And that's great. How many members do you have now?
So up until now, SSI operated on over 80 college campuses and universities across the United States and Canada. We've been in big schools like UCLA, like Columbia, and here in Minnesota. We've been in small schools like Augsburg College or Capital University, and many other campuses or even community colleges. Membership-wise, we have over 1,000 active students within SSI at the moment. We have about 210 alumni who already graduated from our programs, and we keep on growing across North America.
That's really great. And again, your name is SSI International. What do you have outside? I mean, I guess I imagine you're saying Canada when you say North America. Does it go to Europe at all as well?
So as of right now, we most of our operation it's in the United States. Then we have 4 campuses in Canada. We did try to get into the UK before for King's College, but that attempt wasn't successful, at least at the moment. But we are always looking to grow. The idea in SSI is that we don't want to limit ourselves on college campuses only in a specific country. If there would be students, let it be in the UK, in Australia, in South Africa, Israel, students who would like to bring more of Israel education, more Zionism to their universities, to their college campuses, will be there to help those students to make their dreams and their vision come true on their campus.
What sort of programs do you do?
So in the SSI, we have so many programs, and the beautiful part of it, of course, is that most of our programs actually started by students. I'll start with the first program that we usually host on our campuses, and that's also our oldest program over the years, and that's our 9/11 memorials. You know, when we just started SSI in Minnesota, we realized that look at it, we have such a tragedy that took place here in the United States. And as an Israeli myself, who was born and raised in Israel and grew up there during the Second Intifada, I know what terror looked like. So the idea was in the 9/11 memorials that were hosted by students supporting Israel, it's to show that Israel has been facing daily what America has faced here in 2001. And it's very crazy to think about that the current college students, the current incoming freshmen to college campus, they were born post 9/11. So this is just a program that we host at the beginning of every single year. Then we have many lectures and lecture series. For example, our Zionism, modern Zionism lecture, because as we travel across the country and as we've been doing our work, we realize that a lot of times I've been asking students in the classroom, how many of you here consider yourself Zionist? And some hands come up, some hands kind of iffy, shaky about coming up. And we said, okay, so if you consider yourself Zionist, do you know how to define Zionism? Do you know what Zionism even is? And those students, they didn't even know how to define Zionism. And how can we represent Israel on college campus when the opposite side attacks us? And not only they know everything they need to know about themselves, they also know everything about us, supposedly, while our students don't even know what a Zionism is. So we really put an emphasis on a Zionism, how it started, the reasons that led to it, different movements within Zionism, because within Zionism there were many different movements. So that's another big lecture that we host. Then we have our national van campaign in SSI, in which we get in a car and go to some of the toughest colleges in different regions across the country. Let it be the Ivy League schools, let it be in the West Coast, and we set up a table and we send some very, very strong messaging, like anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, something that supposedly be a debate nowadays on college campus when people say, you know what, I have many Jewish friends, but I don't think there should be a Jewish state. And we try to educate students about it, or even we talk about a topic that is not that easy for students to speak sometimes, like Palestinian salaries to terrorists, the whole pay to slay program, which today, unfortunately, if you kill Jewish people in Israel and you go to prison, you're making money off it, So we try to raise some of the tough conversations that it's not always comfortable to speak about. And I think those conversations, that's what kind of bring the students our way, because they see that we're proud about our Zionism, we're proud about our love to Israel, we know what we're talking about, and the movement keeps on growing. And many, many more great programs across the country.
So if I understood you correctly, you're saying that you actually go to other campuses as well in order to set up these programs?
Yeah, so the idea is that, of course, most of the time students come to us. Students, message us on our Facebook page, they message us on Instagram where they're at nowadays, and they ask, how can I start? I saw you, I saw your video, I saw your work. How can we start SSI on our campus? A lot of times we have an interest to get to a location when a student haven't messaged us there, and that's why we go to that specific campus, set up, start tabling, and start talking to students. And my most successful example was when we were at Michigan State University early in October of 2019 in the fall semester. We met a girl that just approached our table and she said what it's all about. I never seen any Israel activity here at Michigan State. And later on, she registered students supporting Israel at Michigan State University. So when the students don't come to us, it's important we also go and look for them so the organization, the student movement keeps on growing.
That's really great. At the risk of making some waves over here, how have you found like the local Hillels on campus or any of the other existing Jewish organizations on campus? Are they did they not do this job at all, or are they too are they too infested with people who are ambivalent or anti-Israel? What's going on with them?
So I'll start by saying that when people ask me about student supporting Israel and our relations to other organizations, I tend to say that SSI is like the United Nations of the Israel organizations on college campus. We're just pro-Israel, not just like the UN, but we work with everyone. We work with any Zionist organization out there. Now, why SSI started? Because there was some vacuum. For years, we started, there are many organizations, there are many resources available for the students. But for some reason, the situation on college campus just keeps getting worse and worse. So how come there are so many amazing resources by so many organizations, but we keep losing on campus? And the conclusion was that It doesn't matter how many resources there would be. It's important if there are students who want to make things happen. And that was the whole idea of SSI, to have a student movement, that the students will be the agents of change and not the professionals or the people that want to provide the resources. So we'll use all that knowledge, we'll use all that information, but it's going to be our students that's going to drive the conversation on campus. And another thing is that we're not a Jewish organization. You mentioned Hillel. Of course, we work with many Hillels across the country. There are Chabads we work with across the country, and so on. But in Students Supporting Israel, something we're very proud of is that about 30 to 40% of our members nationwide are not even Jewish, and they still find a reason to come to Students Supporting Israel and be part of our family. So, as I mentioned, we try to work with everyone, but at the end of the day, SSI is not a Jewish organization. We are a Zionist organization, and we're here to be driving that change on campus without always looking to the sides, but knowing what's our goal, what's our mission, and keep driving forward.
No, that really sounds good. So besides your the programs that you do, directly in order to educate students about Zionism, when things like Israel Apartheid Week come out, do you do anything specifically to counter it?
So when Israel Apartheid Week comes out, we always tell our students, you want to be there. It's important to show up. I've been coaching soccer for many, many years, and something I learned from the soccer world as a coach is that no matter what happens on the field, you got to show up to play. And this is something that we've been really, really trying to emphasize to our students. Because a lot of times when Israel Apartheid Week happens, it doesn't matter if it's a small Israel Apartheid Week or it's a big Israel Apartheid Week. But some people go and see the incitement and hatred against Israel on campus. And if we don't do nothing about it, how can we anticipate from people to join our side? How can we anticipate people to turn and become pro-Israel? It's just impossible, because it's not going to happen on its own. So the idea is that there are always two narratives. If they're hosting Apartheid Week, we will be there on the ground. We'll be there to counter it. Now, how can we counter it? In many ways. Sometimes it can be us giving out flyers or putting a table right across them. So when the student walks by, they see that, hey, there are two sides here. And, it's almost like, to give an example, it's if there would be a Tibet student club on a college campus, and they were going to be tabling against China every single day, but the Chinese Student Association not going to do anything about it, people are going to walk by and say, hey, China is a horrible place. Try to avoid. We try to avoid that vacuum in which students only see one side of the picture. Now, something that we created and very unique also relates to some of our programming of what we are doing in SSI is that we created a bomb shelter campaign. Now, that's a very interesting program that was born in a kitchen table, basically. And what we were saying is the following. SJP puts an apartheid wall on college campuses during their apartheid week. And no matter what you try to do, if you just stand by the wall, it's not good enough. If you give out a flyer, it's not as powerful as the visual. If you don't do anything, also not good. So what can we do in order to counter that? And we said, what makes Israelis uncomfortable? What makes Israeli citizens uncomfortable and their life not as good? The fact that every Israeli household has a bomb shelter in it. This is something that a lot of Americans would not understand, but every single Israeli household that is being built must have a bomb shelter in it. And this is something that is not normal. This is something that should not happen. So we said, hey, let's build a bomb shelter on our college campus. So just like they have their apartheid wall, we'll have our own visual. And on that bomb shelter, on the walls of it, we're going to be painting the rocket range that cover most of Israel with the Qassam and the Fajr rockets that Hamas is sending into Israel. We're going to be talking about, again, the salaries to terrorists that kill Jews. We're going to be talking about all the constant refusal to negotiate with Israel and to solve the situation on the ground. So this is what we done. We already put up 2 of those because this campaign just started. We put up one at Macalester College in Minnesota and one at the University of Toronto in Canada. And then COVID started and we didn't have a chance to keep putting them on. But that's something that we are doing to counter the apartheid wall. They have an apartheid wall. We're going to have a bomb shelter that's going to be speaking about our reality, not just their reality.
That's a brilliant idea. I really, really like that. I've seen, but I have a feeling that colleges are just too that they'll go against you when you do this sort of thing. But I've seen that at least maybe it's just more like a wildcat thing, where the other side would have fake Israeli soldiers that would be asking fake checkpoints and that sort of thing. So at least many years ago, somebody responded to this with water balloons, in which they started saying, "Well, these soldiers aren't there for no reason. There are bombs, there's something like that," and they were doing water balloons. But as I recall, it was the people that were being hit by the water balloons said, "Oh, we're being assaulted" or something, and they actually complained to campus. And I don't know why. I grew up with water balloons. I didn't think it was that much of an assault, but apparently, college kids aren't as tough as third graders were when I was young. But
Well,
is that even a possibility now?
college is a very interesting place nowadays, and actually, our bomb shelter. The name of we have a whole side of the bomb shelter that says "Welcome to our safe space," because this is a term that college students understand real well. And no matter how you put it, a bomb shelter, it's the safe space for 9 million Israelis. So we try to use that terminology in order to win the debate on campus.
That's really great. As I said, I really like that idea. The what is the I mean, on the campuses that you're active, do you see that it makes a difference? Does it change the mood on campus? But what does it feel like?
That's a very good question, and I do see that we're making a difference. I'll be honest. Things on campus, I'm not gonna sell that things on campus are perfect and it's all easy. Things on campus are hard, but we are making a difference, and we're making a difference. How I see it in two ways. A lot of times I get a message from a student that is involved in SSI, just saying thank you, because now, which as part of this SSI family, I felt like I had the power to speak up. Now, when that student spoke up, maybe it didn't change the entire campus, and maybe the campus environment was still bad, but that student stood up for himself or for herself, and that's what we need. Because the worst feeling that a person can have, it's walking away knowing that you should have said something, but you didn't have the tools to say something, or you were shy of saying something. So we see a lot of times those students messaging us on the small and the micro level of, hey, thank you, like I actually was able to stand up in the classroom and challenge the professor. I was able to stand up in front of four people and show my case. So that's one kind of difference we see is happening, and we get those messages all the time. The other difference that we see happening, it's also in the large picture. We see that many of the SSI chapters develop into big club on college campus. I'll give you a few examples. At Kansas State University in Georgia, honestly, a school that I have not heard up until 2 years ago when students from there messaged us. There was an event that was just hosted both with college Democrats, college Republicans, and the Libertarian Club on campus. And the whole event was talking about Israel. So, you got to realize that in some campuses, that event cannot even take place. But at Kansas, our students were able to put up a coalition of all the major political student clubs at the university. Then we see other programs like in Columbia University, our students have been running such a thing called the Hebrew Liberation Week to counter SGP and the Apartheid Week. And we started the university a few years ago, 2 years ago, I believe, in the Daily Spectator or the Columbia newspaper. There was a whole article about how the Hebrew Liberation Week, it's a racist week and so on. But that whole thing was able to change the conversation, because we didn't speak more about like Israeli apartheid and about how Israel is bad. All we spoke about it's the Hebrew Liberation Week at Columbia. And we see other successes. Like I'll give you a success from California. In 2018 or 17, in a matter of 24 hours, three big things happen in a distance of 2.5 hour drive. So at Chapman University in Orange County, where there was SSI chapter, the student government passed pro-Israel legislation. A legislation that is not anti-BDS, it's not we won against BDS, but the legislation spoke strictly for Israel, that our student government supports Israel on this campus. Then a little bit up north, 2 hours from there, in the same day at UC Santa Barbara, when BDS came, 0 people voted for BDS at UCSB. Okay, and then again, there is a strong SSI chapter at UC Santa Barbara. And then on the same day at Cal State Long Beach, when there was no SSI chapter, BDS has passed. So it's almost like a case study for the people who are interested. 2.5 hour drive between the three campuses, BDS or a pro-Israel bill in 3 attempts. Two of them were successful for the Israel side, where there is SSI chapter. One school that there is no SSI chapter, BDS passes. Nowadays, thankfully, there is SSI at Cal State Long Beach, but we do see those accomplishments. And in Hebrew, there is a phrase that says that the person that saves one soul almost like saves the entire world. And that's what we tell our students in SSI. We don't need you to go and right away change the entire campus. But if you were able to speak to one student, change one student opinion, one student heart, you did your share. Now keep going. And I think that that's what our students, that's how they get empowered, because they know that we are here to change the game one by one, game by game, day by day, and not right away hoping that something great going to happen.
When there are BDS resolutions, and it looks like that's that the tide has certainly turned in the past couple of years. BDS used to have like without any opposition, they used to be able to go to these student governments and get these divestiture um, resolutions to pass. But what typically do you guys do when you hear that a BDS resolution is coming?
So first of all, most important for us is not to wait for BDS to come. In SSI, we tell our students there is no reason to why we should sit and wait for BDS to come and then be reactive to it. So what we've been doing, and I think we're the only organization that's been really pushing for it, it's that we've been passing pro-Israel bills in student government. And until today, SSI movement passed 11 resolutions in different student governments in support of Israel, and against those resolutions also spoke against the BDS movement. So the idea is to initiate. Our defense starts by attacking. And we passed the first one, actually, why we turned into a national organization. It's that when the students in Indiana and Chicago heard that in 2014 we passed a pro-Israel bill at the University of Minnesota student government, that's when they approach us and say, hey, how you did what you did. So later on, the resolutions were passed not only in Minnesota, but in University of Georgia, in Texas A&M, in Chapman University, in Capital University in Ohio, and a few other places. Now, not everywhere we can pass pro-Israel bill. So what are we doing when BDS comes? We tell our students to be ready and to prepare. A lot of times, it's to know what's your arguments, to know which senators you lobby. And I'll tell you something else that very important in the pro-Israel community and the students here. It is not enough to just lobby student senators for BDS not to pass. What we need to do, what the pro-Israel students need to do, we need to run for those positions, for the student senator position, for the at-large position, for whatever other positions they are, in order to sit in those spots. Because a lot of times when something bad happens, it's too late to go and knock on someone's door and say that, hey, we need your help now. We want us to be in those leadership positions, and that's what we push our SSI students to do in order to avoid BDS coming in the first place.
That's really great. I mean, I'm loving everything I'm hearing about this. This as a how centralized is it, or what I really mean to ask is, do you have resources in the in the international or in the headquarters that can be used by other campuses, and what
Yes,
sort of resources?
of course, every chapter that joins, we of course try to send them like a box that has some t-shirts in it, some bracelets in it, pens in it, all the stuff that students use. We don't necessarily send pamphlets, but we send them things that students use, that your name gets out there on campus, and people start seeing your name and almost like get a brand recognition. And that's how SSI was able to grow, because it's very important for us that students suddenly in the classroom sit down and write with the students supporting Israel pen. Now, we also realize that by sending a pen or a bracelet, that doesn't solve the situation on campus. So we do teach our students. We do teach our students. We host our national conference in between semesters to give the students almost like a halftime talk on how to get back to campus. We have a resources page on our website with typically common accusations against Israel and what you can reply or why this accusation is false. We have our students supporting Israel book club, and we have many projects. If you go on our website at ssimovement.org, we have a books project in which any student out there can order a book from Students Supporting Israel for free. Because we do realize that books helping students to know their answers. If students read, if students know, it helps them to know what's happening in Israel past the 200 letters that you can put on Twitter. So that's what we try to do to our students, to teach them at their national conference, to send them books so that they can read and gain knowledge, to also have them, I'll be very open with you, to have the students go and make a mistake sometimes, because the students don't need to be a walking encyclopedia. The students doesn't need to go out there and be able to shoot right away. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is how we that's how we protect Israel. We want our students to go out there and try and to speak up and to make a mistake sometime and learn from it and learn how to do it better, because this is the way students learn. And while they do those maybe mistakes or get those accomplishments, they keep on learning in ways that SSI National keeps channeling through that information. Let it be by a good article that we send to our leaders, say this article is worth reading. Let it be by a brainstorming session between our students in which you all get on the line and brainstorm together. So there are many, many different ways, but this is the beauty of grassroots, right? This is the beauty. You go out there, you learn, you make a mistake, you get better, you keep improving, but as long as you show up, as long as you're proud, you can succeed.
That's great. Does SSI take any political positions on things like like currently when everybody's talking about either extending sovereignty or extending Israeli law on parts of Judea and Samaria? Does it take any positions like that, or does it try to be more generic than that?
So SSI, we're not a political organization. We have something we've been very proud in, is that we have members, both Democratic students, both Republican students, conservative students, liberal students, and they're all part of one organization. Now, how come, sometimes, especially in times like today, we tend to hear how can Democrats and conservatives and liberals and Republicans get together in the same household. And I'll tell you how they do it in SSI. In SSI, our mission is to be a clear and confident pro-Israel voice and to support students in grassroots activism. And what we all agree on within SSI, that we support Israel both as Jewish and democratic state within secured and safe borders. Now, we don't go and tell the Israelis, hey, that's the borders you should have, or that's where you'll be more safe. But we all agree on that Israelis should be safe within secured borders. And we believe that Israelis are smart enough. There are 9 million Israelis who live out there, that they're smart enough to decide what is best for themselves, Because when we started SSI, what was really bothering us for Israelis, we started SSI with 3 Israelis, is that how come someone that lives tens of thousands of miles away knows best what's good for me in Sderot or what's good for me in Kiryat Arba or Kiryat Shmone? There is just no reason in the world to why someone from a suburb in the States or from a city or elsewhere know what's best for but the Israelis themselves for themselves. So that was something that was very, very important for us in SSI. And the way we see SSI for the football lovers, again, we always go back to sports, it's that Israel is the quarterback. SSI, we're the lineman. And our job is to defend our quarterback, let it be a touchdown or let it be a pass or an interception. But our job is to defend Israel, which is our quarterback. And you know what? Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. But we're not picking if we like to defend Israel when it's easy or hard. We know that that's what Israel does. Our job is to know how to explain why Israel did what it did. And because of that ideology, because of that belief, all those students come together to SSI from so many different political backgrounds.
So that brings up the next question. It's obvious, like you mentioned before, about like Students for Justice in Palestine, and I'm assuming it's pretty much the same with the Jewish Voice for Peace. But how does your relationship with J Street on these campuses?
I'll tell you, a bit problematic over the years, because in many times I remember when we needed to defend Israel against different BDS votes. So there are many J Street students who were attacking Israel and supporting BDS. And we cannot partner with organizations or students who cut a pass to BDS. Now, if J Street students want to come and celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut together with everyone else on campus, not a problem. Every case to its own. If J Street students want to come to an event that is hosted by SSI and have a speaker that SSI brings on, not a problem. But we're not going to give room to organizations who spend most of their day criticizing Israel instead of trying to explain what Israel does. There's so many people out there criticizing Israel let's be the ones that support Israel. Let's be the ones that try to explain what Israel does. And that goes to all the organizations that if you go on their social media, let it be, if not now, let it be a Jewish Voice for Peace, let it be, of course, SJP, let it be J Street in many locations. Those organizations, they're so busy in criticizing Israel, we're not going to spend the time to criticize Israel either. We're here to protect Israel, we're here to defend Israel, we're here to explain what Israel does and why Israel does what it does. And we're here to be the second side of the story to the college student who walks around and wants to pick a side.
I mean, again, you're speaking, you're preaching to the choir here because you're speaking pretty much everything, the sort of stuff that I've been, blogging about for way too long now. Are there, what's the future look like?
That's why students keep joining the organization and the movement keeps on going because there are many, many people who think like us, but for years they were just quiet or they were supporting Israel from the sideline. Let's take the field, right?
Sure, that's great. How do you see it growing? What do you see in the future, and what other sort of either projects or directions would you like to see SSI go?
So, first of all, I'll start by saying that when we just started SSI, we never imagined that that's what it's going to turn into. And we never imagined that we're going to have 200 alumni and over 1,000 students involved in the operations on over 80 campuses. It was almost like a dream coming into reality. Now, what's ahead? What's in store for us? I believe that nowadays more and more students are going to keep coming towards SSI because, especially in times like today, in the moments of crisis, and today there is crisis in college campuses. We cannot deny it or close a blind eye to it. So students look to be affiliated with something. They look to be part of a family. And if a student who believes in Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, if a student supports the Jewish people right for self-determination, if those students are looking for home on campus, their home will be within students supporting Israel. So I see us growing into different campuses, and everywhere that students would like to bring us, we'll be there for those students. Of course, we'll keep being proactive to try to continue finding new locations and keep growing as a student movement. But I do believe that more and more students, especially today in times of crisis, will be finding SSI, and we'll make sure to hug them and to give them the stage and platform that they've been waiting on or deserved for so many years.
That sounds really good, and I wish you much luck in all of this. And for whatever, I know that you just told me that you graduated, but you'll be involved for a little bit longer, at least in it. And I know that there are other people certainly involved. So again, I love hearing about grassroots organizations like this. I love hearing people that actually do stuff, and that can do it fast and creatively. So really, really, Hatzlacha Rabbah. Good luck with everything you do. Thank you very much for coming on.
Toda rabba, and thank you very much. I appreciate you and your time here.
Okay. Again, my guest has been Ilan Sinlenikov, and the president and co-founder of Students Supporting Israel International. For now, I am Elder of Zion. Thanks a lot. I will see you guys next time.
Bye bye.